Today, thank you for everyone watching. I'm joined by Chris Markowski, our Eastern Region Account Executive. Chris, thanks so much for hopping in today.
Hey, Ryan. Good to be with you.
Yeah, excited to talk to you. I know consumer protection has been something that is top of everybody's mind in the industry, obviously, and especially for us here at Solar Insure. You are one of our many in-house experts in terms of consumer protection. So this is going to be great for everybody watching. But for the people that maybe don't know you, and maybe some of your accounts you work with are going to be watching as well. But give people a little introduction to yourself, how you came about Solar Insure, and then we'll dive in and talk some more of consumer protection.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, been in the industry for a little bit. This March will actually be 13 years in the biz, and most of that time was actually interfacing directly with homeowners at a large national installer, and really just got very familiar with the issues and concerns that homeowners have when they're looking into solar.
Mhm.
So, from there, moved over to one of the lenders in the space and got to know the financing, lending side of the solar industry. And, about late 2023, I was looking for my next role. And I said, hey, I'm seeing some things in the industry that, I'm concerned about. A lot of people are concerned about, people outside the industry are looking at, perhaps concerned about. And where is a place, a space in the industry I could go to that I think is going to really do some good and change the industry for the better? And it just so happened that Solar Insure was ramping up their team, and sometimes things just line up right.
Yeah, right. Sometimes the stars align, and here you
Indeed.
are doing exactly what you need to. And that's a perfect segue. You seeing things that maybe were a little concerning in the industry. So obviously the topic of today we're going to talk about is consumer protections. And it's
Right.
something that I think has been so needed in this industry that for as long as I've been in it, 6, 7 years now, people have called the wild, wild west of solar,
Yeah.
right? There
Yeah.
it's just people go do whatever they want. So start like give us just as the expert, your definition, kind of what is consumer protection? Why is this really needed in the industry?
For sure. I think as simply put as possible, it's practices, initiatives, systems, etc., that put the customer first.
Mhm.
I believe in simple definitions. I think that's the easiest way to put it, is just putting the customer first.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a perfect definition. You can't really get more simple. It's like customers need to be first in this market, in any contracting market. And you've seen it in some of the more developed ones like HVAC, people have been around, but
Yeah.
solar's for as long as solar's been here, it still feels like there's a lot of people that are out there that are still maybe not putting that customer first in a lot of their business dealings.
Yeah, for sure. Whether it's cutting corners on workmanship or, really kind of outsized sales commissions. I think a lot of folks outside the industry, if they were to like see the nuts and bolts of that, they'd agree that it is indeed outsized. Um, outsized sales commissions that are kind of leading sales reps to do things that might not be in the homeowner's best interest. And in so doing, they are kind of taking the value away from the homeowner.
Yeah. So do you think that is, and what other things maybe are leading to some hesitation from a lot of homeowners to be adopting solar and getting into the market?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of bad press out there about solar sales practices. There was a huge article in Time
Hmm.
about solar sales practices. Just last year, there were some very high profile bankruptcies.
Yeah.
So any homeowner who's considering solar right now, and they can do a quick Google search, they're going to be rightfully wondering, like, what the heck is going on in the solar industry?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, I have been a part of it. I've been with sales organizations that, the company wants to promote whatever it is, whether it's battery storage or something, and
Yeah.
then you heavily leverage your sales team to go do that, which sounds like a great place to start, but then sometimes it just kind of spirals out of control, and now, it's the inmates are leading the jail, right?
Right. Right.
Uh, So what do you see then for some of these solar providers that are out there and maybe running into some of these problems, maybe negative consumer sentiment, bad reviews, or just people that are even trying to get into it to, get themselves that brand reputation. Like, what are some of maybe the common mistakes that companies are making that are leading to the lack of trust? I know you mentioned sales practices. What else is kind of going on
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, I think you just kind of hit on it, Ryan. Like misinformation and disinformation are really the most insidious things in the industry right now, honestly. And if you have sellers of solar systems that are incentivized to push a certain financing product or, you know, sell the biggest system they possibly can, the system layout, or to sell the system with or without battery storage, that's inherently going to change what the customer is actually looking for and what's best for the customer, right? It's gonna
Mhm.
influence things beyond what the customer initially was looking for. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. Um, as far as installers warranties that they're providing, we have seen installers that join the industry and they have, I think, the right idea where they say, hey, we want to match our workmanship warranty to 20 or 25 years, the product warranty on the equipment.
Mhm.
And then they actually end up dialing back that time frame because
Really?
they're unsure of the long-term cost of that warranty obligation. So that's another interesting thing that we've seen as far as some of the mistakes or kind of missteps you can make in this part of the
Mhm.
field.
Yeah, I mean, warranties are one that, especially I think if you're newer, like a newer provider in solar, is something that kind of catches a lot of people off guard because you think of it very much like other contracting, where you do it, it's fine, it's there. One of the
Right.
biggest misinformation things in my experience that's been said in solar is the whole there's no maintenance, there's no moving parts, right? It's a set and
Right.
forget it type of system. What else do you see as some of like the biggest pieces of misinformation and like disinformation that are going on out there?
Yeah, I mean that's a great example. I think that is something that salespeople were just trained in the wrong way to say for a long time. And the reality is, well, there more than likely will be maintenance that's needed. And the sales reps who are setting themselves apart from, you know, competitor sales reps are being very upfront and honest about the fact that maintenance will be needed. And hey, my company has a plan long term for you.
Yeah. So that, it's open honesty. That's
Yeah.
the way sales reps need to go. Like, is it best to take that kind of educational approach, you think, to really show customers what this looks like and like and teach them? And I always take that kind of approach. Is like the end of this, I may not be getting a yes out of you right now, but you're gonna know more about how this works. Like, do you think that's the best approach that sales reps should be taking?
Yeah, 100%. And I think we're going to be hitting on that more than once in this conversation.
For sure.
But yeah, it's always the way to go for sure. But back to the installers warranties, right? I think if we're looking at an installer who out of the gate they said, "Hey, I want to offer a 25-year warranty," and then they on their workmanship and they ended up dialing back. I
Mhm.
think it's worth noting that the heart of that decision is, "Hey, I actually want to be able to make good on the promise that I'm making."
Yeah.
So if my business has been around for, 5 years and I'm only comfortable making a 5-year commitment on that workmanship, it might be better than an inflated
Yeah.
promise.
Yeah, no kidding. Right? I mean, if you're somebody who's talking like, you could get all the best numbers in the world and everything amazing sounds on paper, but like a true honest conversation with somebody, it's like, look, I've only been around for 5 years, so I'm only comfortable giving you a warranty as long as I've been here because it seems
Right.
disingenuous. Like that. That's a great sales practice, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. But even still, the customer can still be left wanting there as far as long-term protection goes, right? And
Mhm.
something I'm hearing quite often these days when I'm interfacing with installers is that they're conveying homeowners are looking for a warranty that is real. It's backed by something.
Mhm.
And it can be 25 years, it can be 50 years that the installer is offering on workmanship, but the customer still can say, well, what happens if your company's no longer around?
That's always the killer question, right? And traditionally, sales reps have always said like, well, I'm not really sure. They just, divert the conversation, right? So where
Right.
do you see that conversation then moving on from there? Like, what should sales reps be able to say after that?
Yeah, for sure. It goes back to honesty, transparency, and I think if I'm a homeowner, I want to just give it to me straight, right? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
if your company goes out of business, this workmanship warranty is null and void, right? Like
Mhm.
that's the truth. Um, Companies have the best intentions to stay around, right? The most successful companies, they've been around, they've weathered hard times, they've learned from it, and they'll continue to do that. I think an example of an installer that is making strides in this arena is perhaps offering like a menu of
Mhm.
service that they
Okay.
could disclose even before they sell the system to say, hey, this is, an inverter swap out costs X amount of dollars, whatever it may be.
Mhm.
So I think this goes a long way towards that transparency and being upfront about the reality of owning a solar system, but still you could then have a frustrated customer who's like, okay, well, I just spent $30,000 on this system, and you're telling me I need to pay $2,000 to replace, the brains of the system. Like,
Yeah.
even if they knew what it was going to cost ahead of time, they could still be upset, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it feels like a place where that disinformation, misinformation maybe comes back in because if you're comparing quotes, you could say, all right, well, installer A is being really honest and transparent with me and telling me what those costs are.
Right,
Installer B just kind of avoided the question and just told me, oh, there's no moving parts and it's got a manufacturer warranty on it. So,
right. Or
like, what
they're
would
or
you
they're
recommend
they're
to people?
promising.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Or they're
No,
promising
it's
me the
good.
moon, and they're saying, okay, I have a 25-year workmanship warranty. Don't worry about it. No matter what happens, we're going to take care of it.
Mhm. Yeah. So how do you recommend then that those honest and open sales reps and companies, how do you approach that conversation? Is it like a pointing out those guys probably have something they're not telling you about, or what should that conversation look like?
Yeah, I think for a seller, it always comes back to just confidence in what your organization, your company will and won't do, right?
Mhm.
And I think prospective shoppers, they can feel that, they can see that, right? If you're slinging mud and you're saying, well, hey, XYZ Solar is telling you this, but they're not really going to do it, it never looks good. Be honest about what your company's willing to commit to and give the best info you can on projected maintenance costs, what components are more likely to fail than others. And then of course, like what have you done to make sure that the work is covered, be it a warranty that you have from your company or a warranty that you're using like Solar Insures that exists outside of your company.
Mhm. Yeah, gives them that beautiful independent
Yeah.
backing. No, it really helps people be able to have more honest conversations.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, and it's a good, I think, a really good kind of mindset change where rather than fighting the competition and what they are saying, it is focusing on what you are doing. And from a sales standpoint too, kind of takes a sales team and a company to change their idea from I want to win everything to like I want to win the right kind of
Yeah.
deals. It's not going to cause us
Oh,
problems.
certainly. I think at the end of the day, if the sellers at your company, if the operations people at your company, project managers, anyone interfacing with the customer, if the approach is anything other than educational and supportive in nature, it's going to work against building trust with the homeowner. I always, when I was managing sales teams and training sales reps, I always use this analogy, right? And if I was working with real like gearheads, it didn't really work. But imagine, you don't know much about cars and you're going into a mechanic shop. How do you feel?
Oh, terrible. Yeah, terrible.
Yeah, you feel like you could be taken advantage of. You just kind of
Mhm.
feel like it's not a level playing field, right? You need to take the expert's word.
Yep.
And you can't do that unless you trust them.
No, it's a perfect
So
analogy. Honestly, it works out that because yeah, I just had maintenance done on my car and I don't know a
yeah,
thing about my car. And like that's yeah, you really talk to somebody, it's like these people are not just trying to sell me the new tires because like, oh, they want the extra profit. It's like you're selling you tires because you need tires and it's a solution to a problem you're having.
yeah, yeah, 100%. I think most homeowners, you can't overgeneralize this, but I think most homeowners are not experts in electrical construction, general project management, carpentry, arboreal work, excavation. You know as well as I, a solar project can be all of these things and
Mhm.
perhaps more. So trusting your installer and perhaps even your sales rep, more importantly, is everything.
Yeah, most important. Absolutely. So getting into then, we know kind of the problems that are existing and some solutions. How do you see the solar industry evolving over the next, few years, 5 years or so to kind of bring more consumer protections to homeowners?
Yeah, I see that companies focused on sustainable growth and putting, as we've been talking about, putting the customer first, they've lasted the longest in the
Mm,
industry today.
okay.
So kind of first just looking back, like what has worked? Companies that have grown too fast, the hyper growth companies, they're in 20 different states. It's really easy for that plane to fall apart while it's flying, as we've
Mm,
seen. Um, Companies who are focused on sustainable growth, putting the customer first, these are the companies that are going to continue to own their respective markets. What I've been really encouraged to hear, I interface with a lot of owners of installation companies, some that have been around a long time, some that are just getting started up. And what I hear most often when they're, newer owners are conveying why they wanted to start their own company is that they worked for installers that had poor business practices.
mm,
They cut corners on workmanship or the customer experience in some way. And being able to operate in the exact opposite manner is why they're starting their company.
really? Okay.
So learning from the failures of the past companies they've worked for, I think that's really powerful. And it gives me a lot of hope for the future of the industry.
Seriously.
So I think in the next 5 years, we're going to see a lot of new companies entering the space that are really founded from this solid, like just place of putting the customer first. I don't mean, I'm like, I don't mean to be on the soapbox right now, but that's what I'm seeing and feeling. And it gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's exactly what needs to happen. It's really encouraging to see that. I mean, I'm sure you've seen and you've talked to a lot of people, a lot of the accounts you work with that are built exactly on that principle.
Yeah. Yeah. I recently met a owner of a very new company, and this gentleman had been in the industry for several years and decided to start his own company. And he said something that really stuck with me, Ryan. He said, I was just sick and tired of all of the negligence in the industry and putting the customer last.
Wow, that's
And that
huge.
just
That's
that
powerful.
it really stuck with me. And the other side of that coin, putting the customer first, that's really how I'm ending up on this is like, if you want to put it in a short phrase, that is what consumer protection is. That is what we're often seeing is not happening in the industry that needs to change.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's the perfect synopsis of exactly that is and it seems like consumer protection too is it's people taking an active concerted effort to make that happen, but it also feels a little bit like it's an evolution of the industry when it's very young and it's early and people are just kind of figuring out they can make money and making money. And then you have that evolution where finally people are seeing, yeah, those cut corners, the previous people that like they just felt bad working for that. So then they start evolving and changing it so that it naturally happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's I think we're getting to a place too where you're just not going to be able to compete if you're not considering this stuff.
Hmm.
Like your warranties specifically.
Yeah.
I'm seeing that warranty, like the robustness and the length of the warranty that you offer as an installer, it's going to continue to be a point of competitive difference,
Hmm.
right? So if you're not offering a real long-term protection plan, you might not be able to compete,
Wow.
sincerely. And homeowners are smart enough to ask, as we said before, what happens to my system if your company goes out of business?
Hmm.
Do you have a plan for that? What happens to me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And people are finally realizing that this is a 30-year plus commitment. So
Right.
it's no longer the days of like I'm the only thing you're buying this based off is how much you're going to save today.
Yeah.
It's people really looking at this long term.
Yeah. 100%. Outside of the installer's business practices, I think we're going to continue to see battery storage adoption grow. In states that don't really have any meaningful NEM programs, storage installations are happening. And I think that's really cool to see, right?
Mhm.
Where you can you can see that a market is starting to get propped up, not solely based on the value proposition of save money, save money. It's more than that. It's resiliency, it's, grid independence, it's maybe there's a, climate, environmental motivation, but it's not just, hey, how much money can you save me? It's more. I
Yeah.
find that
Yeah.
really encouraging too.
And I think moving beyond that dollar value too is so important, but that also brings its own challenges potentially because batteries are this tough kind of mass to figure out how to properly put the value onto. So
Mm.
in terms of especially with battery storage adoption going up, like what role do you think that enhanced training and certification programs are going to play in the future of where the industry is going?
Yeah, that's a great question. Training's everything. I see that highly trained sales teams have the ability to offer a solution to the homeowner with the highest level of confidence. And that's really everything, right? If you understand the product inside and out, you can answer those nitty-gritty questions, you can address the concerns that the homeowner might have. That's what a highly trained sales team can do.
Mhm.
Um, it then makes it really clear, like if you're a homeowner and you meet with two companies, it's going to just be clear as day, the sales rep who is just trying to make a sale and push you towards something,
Yeah.
you know? Um, the installation process, equipment specs, even like how these solar loans work, right? These solar specific loans. A sales rep having all of that intimate knowledge, it really brings them from like a sales rep to a consultant level, in my
Mhm.
opinion. And homeowners feel that. I really love when I hear about sales leaders who seek training, right? The best sales leaders I see in this industry actively seek training from vendors, lenders, partners in the business, whoever. Um, and they'll regularly bring them in to train their sales team, right? Those sales reps have such an advantage when they've had direct contact with, let's say, a solar panel manufacturer, and they know all of this like granular knowledge about it, right? We always say like, oh, if you get the electrical engineer, they're going to grill you on all the
Yeah.
system spec stuff. Well, imagine if
Yeah.
you just knew that. Well, imagine if you just knew that because your sales
Yeah.
manager and your sales leadership, made that training possible.
You'd immediately have the respect of that homeowner.
100%.
Yeah. Now, are there any, there's a lot of industry certifications. Do you see anything as like the gold standard that want to really make sure that like that's where you put a lot of stock in?
Yeah, I'd like to see more sales reps NABCEP certified, like the technical sales training
Yeah.
about how to design systems and model system performance and whatnot. I'd like to see more of that. Um, it takes time. It takes, investment. You got to do continuing education and get certified. I understand, but I think it's worth it. I think the
Absolutely.
best installers have NABCEP certified electricians and techs for sure.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
and manufacturers have training and certifications that they offer. So the more well versed that an installer's employees are with the equipment they're installing, and if they have direct communication with that vendor, the better.
Yeah. I mean, as somebody who's NABCEP certified myself, I can tell you how much authority and credibility that it gives you and just a deeper understanding of how things work.
Yeah,
It goes so far with customers, not to mention too, then you're in a database of NABCEP certified people and you have people, customers who will go look at that before they choose who even to contact for initial quotes. So yeah, that's a
100%.
great call out. That's a perfect one. So we've talked a lot about what the industry and what companies are doing, but the third party here that, of course, is always ever present in solar is government, regulatory agency, stuff like that. So do you think there are going to be any changes implemented from that end, or are there changes being implemented right now?
Yeah, no, there certainly are. I mean, there are states that are kind of cracking down on licensure or even ensuring that any sellers of solar need to be direct employees of the company, right? This is happening now. So there are some real regulatory changes happening and continuing to happen.
Hmm.
I think the best example of the industry self-regulating to date is probably Recheck, which aims to be a registry for sales reps and installation companies and was founded by some of the industry's largest lending companies. So it's currently voluntary. At some point, it will not be voluntary. So if you want to offer these loans, you need to be registered via Recheck, right? So that's a really big change. And
Okay.
the aim is to avoid, fraud and some of the real more like insidious like problems that are happening in at least like the lending part of the industry.
Love that. I love
But
that.
but yeah, the idea is if you're a sales rep, right, you can say, hey, here's my Recheck ID. You can look me up in this registry. Please make sure that any other sales reps you're meeting for solar are also registered.
It leaves such a great spot for you just like, I have this, and they can look up the benefits. Somebody else they're comparing you to, like, well, why don't you guys do that? Like it leaves
Totally.
those seats of doubt in a customer's mind, not from like, oh, this is a problem, but from a like real, like, why don't you guys do this extra protection, for me
Yes.
type of deal.
Exact.
That's
100%.
fantastic.
Yeah. If I'm in the homeowner's shoes, I'd be wondering, why can't I find this person on Recheck? Right.
Yeah, right. Along that line, then, what else can, homeowners, consumers be buying? So I guess businesses as well. Like, what can they do to make sure that they're best informed and making their safe choices when they're choosing a solar provider?
Yeah. I think that if you're a homeowner considering solar, the best perspective you can have is to like you are interviewing the installer, right?
Mhm.
Ask them about their warranties, ask them about their installation process, ask them what are all of the financing and purchasing options that you have available. And as the buyer, as the homeowner, you might really need to like cut through a sales pitch, and kind of stop the salesperson
Yeah.
in their tracks a bit to get the answers you need. But that's okay. Like at the end of the day, this is a big investment and you need to be sure that you're getting all of your questions answered. Never let a high pressure sales tactic influence you to make a decision you're not comfortable with. That if I could, speak into a loudspeaker and the entire US or, world would hear that regarding buying a solar system, that would be my one piece of advice.
Yeah. No,
But
don't
really,
just
I
find something from the guy knocking on your door.
yeah, and the guy knocking on your door might have a really good solar deal.
Yeah.
He or she might, but you just need to make sure that the solar solution you're being offered is exactly what you want. And
Mhm.
in most regions of the country, there is so much competition that you can get several quotes to make sure of that.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think really the installer who's set up their business close to where you live, who's accessible, who has really sound and substantive customer reviews, this is typically going to be the installer who's going to do the best work for you. They live and operate in your community. And if you can pop into their shop and say, hey, I got an issue, it's probably going to be the installer for you. Not always the case, but
The level of
and
accessibility just adds to your protection.
totally, totally. And I think in the US, we've been conditioned to think that bigger is better, right? Like the too big to fail concept.
Yeah, right.
And that there's perceived safety and security in going with the largest company, and that could be measured in the number of employees or the number of states they service or the number of customers they have or whatever. But I don't think it's necessarily true for the solar industry, right? Take ADT Solar as an example. Many customers decided to work with them because of the brand recognition.
Mhm.
But when ADT said, hey, this solar business isn't penciling for us, they pull out. Now, what happens to the support that those thousands and thousands
Right.
of customers
There's
needed?
left. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know we are closing on our time here, so just last question then for you. I know because we've talked a lot about benefits of cash and loan and how that can really add to protection. So how do you think that companies implementing more cash and loan and ownership, how does that really bring benefits to their homeowners and then increase that protections that they have too?
yeah, for sure. I think, again, I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but it goes back to putting the customer first.
Mhm.
Homeowners owning their system is the way to give the most value to them long term. And if they understand the risks involved with owning a solar system, which, yes, certainly includes maintenance and repairs, and they have the protections in place to cover that when, not if it happens, then owning a system is the best way to go. Now, some homeowners cannot benefit from the 30% investment tax credit. And for these homeowners, maybe a lease or a PPA is the way to go. In my humble opinion, I think like if you can find a company that's offering a prepaid lease or PPA
Mhm.
and you can pay through it, you can pay for it from your own cash reserves or financing that you secure on your own, that's probably the best way to go.
Okay.
But I think for installers, it really comes down to how do they want to interact with their customers long term. If they've given the homeowner the most value by encouraging them to own their system, I think that's a great start. But the installer who offers other lines of business, let's say, insulation, weatherproofing, HVAC, electrical, roofing, could be anything really. These installers can foster long-term relationships with their customers, and they're going to benefit from repeat and referral business, right? So it goes beyond just being a solar installer, and now you're fostering a relationship with this homeowner where you can help them with many of the needs for their home. So
Yeah. I love that. I love it. It's fantastic. Well, Chris, I appreciate you so much hopping in and talking with everybody here today about all this consumer protection. I'm sure this will be a continually evolving industry, but thank you so much for the time today.
absolutely, my pleasure, Ryan.
All right. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching the video today.